everybody. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Dirt, Grain, and Steel. On today's episode, we are going to cover crane mats. Crane mats are typically used for holding excavators, cranes, oil rig equipment, anything heavy used to hold it up in wet situations or soft situations, or a situation where there is a very fragile ecological system, such as a swamp or a grass field or something that cannot be torn up. So mats are laid out to make a temporary road or a temporary work platform to work off of, and when the mats are picked up, there was no harm done to the environment that they were in. So we're going to go over some different kinds of mats. We're going to go over some specifications on some mats. I'm not a complete expert on them. I've done some research on them. I know what mats I've used and how well they work and the sizes that I've used, but there are other sizes out there. There are different weights. There are different holding capacities of different mats. I did a little research and I got some basic info on them, and I'm going to get a couple scenarios set up. I've got my John Deere 690B excavator toy, 1/16 scale. This machine in real life, this is what I learned in. I learned in a 690B. This one's actually a 690A, but I'm calling it a B. But anyways, I learned in a 690B. My dad used to run one, and I'd stand behind the seat and I'd look over his shoulder, and that's how I learned to run excavator. And then when I was old enough, I took over the controls. So a John Deere 690B weighs about 38,300 pounds, has typically 24-inch track pads on it, so fairly wide pad for the age of the machine. And it's got about a 6.5 psi of ground pressure per square inch under it. So they're light on their feet, really, for their size and for the age of the machine. Back then, when they built the 690B, it was kind of ahead of its time, and they actually made a pretty good excavator when they started building them. Up until then, they really didn't. I shouldn't say they weren't concerned, but they didn't put very big track systems under it. Let's put it that way. I mean, you've seen a lot of your old hose. They had real small undercarriages under them with real narrow pads. I mean, the length of the undercarriage was like a pack of bubble gum underneath them. It wasn't really big. So, but anyways, we're going to go through a few scenarios. I'm going to go through a scenario that we're fighting right now and show you how we're going to solve it with the use of mats. But first of all, let's get started with some different mats and some descriptions of those mats and some specifications on them so you can understand them a little better. But like I said, I'm not a professional at this. I shouldn't say I'm not a professional. I'm learning myself about mats, and I've always known about mats. I've used them before, but I investigated them a little farther, learned some more things about other types of mats, so I figured I could maybe educate you a little bit on them. So I'm going to get some not going to set up scenarios yet. We're going to go through mats. So let me get some stuff set up and I'll get back with you. Okay, so the first mat we're going to discuss is the laminated mat. These mats usually come in sizes 8 foot wide by 14 foot long, or they come 8 foot wide by 16 foot long. They're usually about 4 1/4 inches thick, and they have a load capacity of 25,000 pounds per square foot. They are cross-laminated timbers. So cross-laminated basically is a lamination this way and a lamination that way, and I'm not sure if I think they're glued together with a high-density strong glue. I'm not sure what brand of glue, maybe like a Gorilla Glue, who knows. But anyways, this is a piece of plywood, but this is the theory of how they're put together. I mean, you can see the different layers in there, and that's how they would be put together. this is not to scale. If you scale this with the excavator, this would be way too thick. So none of this is to scale. I didn't get that crazy with it. We're going to move on to our timber mats, which this mat is what I'm typically used to working with. Timber mats are most common. They are 4 by 8 wide. They can be 4 foot wide, 8 foot long, or up to 40 foot long. Sorry, I can't talk today. So you kind of pick your length. They're kind of a custom deal, whatever length you want, but usually that 4 foot wide is a standard on them. The length is variable. They're usually 8 inches thick. They're a hardwood, usually a hardwood oak, a Douglas fir, or a southern yellow pine, and they are bolted together with long bolts, which mine, since they're just a model, mine are hot glued together. But I just hauled 82 of these mats home, real life, real size ones, and all the ones that we brought home are drilled all the way through, and there's a bolt all the way through with a nut and a big head on one end, and they are all drawn together. Mine are hot glued, but usually they are stepped in so that you can hook on that round rod that's all the way through them that holds them together, so you can pick them up with some kind of rigging. Or typically guys will make a loop on one end out of a piece of cable and hook a bucket tooth or a mat hook on it and drag it around to where they need it to go, or place it where they want. So that's the timber mat, which the crane mat is the same principle. Crane mats are usually 4 foot by 20 foot long, and they are 12 inches thick, and they weigh about 3,560 pounds, so they're pretty heavy. A T300 Bobcat, I've got some true 12-inch thick 4x20s, and a T300 Bobcat, it's all it wants to pick up one at a time. I've actually got about, let's see, I got 6 or 8 of those mats left. They are usually a high-strength wood, most of the time a fir, and they're also bolted together. Yes, they're bolted together. The timber mats, I don't have a weight on them, but if I had to guess, they're still up there around the 2,500 pound range for a 20-footer. Well, 18-footer. That's what we just hauled, was 18-footers home. So they're pretty heavy. Now we're going to move on to waffle mats. Which waffle mats, if you watch Swamp Loggers with Bobby Goodson and Goodson All Terrain Logging, they use waffle mats on there, I've seen. They lay them out, and they actually pile dirt over them and make a roadway to drive the trucks on. And they're either waffle mats or they're called rig mats. They're usually 4 inches thick, and they're 8 by 20 foot, and they weigh about 2,070 pounds, so they're not super heavy. And they'll hold up to 72,000 pounds per square foot. So these are pretty tough mats, and they're going to be a little flexible too. So that's the waffle mat. As you can see, they're layered of like 2x12s in real life, I would say. I couldn't get a real description on what they are exactly made out of, but the ones that I have seen are like a 2x12, and they're all bolted together and they form a nice mat. Another mat that can be used, these are just paper right now, but imagine if these were plastic. Poly mats. Usually they're 1/2 to 3/4 inches thick. I found that there's several different sizes of them, so I didn't really write down a size. I found that there's 8x8 square ones. There's 4x8 square ones, which these are 4x8. Well, I cut them. They're, in theory, they're 4x8. They're like a sheet of plywood. But the nice thing about poly mats is they'll hold up to 120 tons. Will not bend, or I'm sorry, will not break, but they will bend. So that is nice about them, that they won't break. They will bend, will not become waterlogged, which that's the problem with any kind of wooden mat. is it becomes waterlogged and it becomes extra heavy. And another thing about poly mats is they will not rot. So you buy them once, you have them for a lifetime. So they're not going to rot out from under you. Poly mats are typically used for like tree services that have to go in yards. If they need to go in a backyard with a bobcat or something, they will actually lay these out like this and drive their bobcat down them or their trucks across them. And then when they get to where they need to go and they need to turn around, they'll lay out some bigger ones out here so that they have a nice spot to spin around with the bobcat and head back the other direction. So these are mainly used for like that, or if you need to cross a football field with a big truck, or just something like that, that you're trying to protect a yard. You won't see these out in the swamps. They're not durable enough for that. And here's another example of polyplastic. This is actually a cutting board, but it's the same material and very strong. I can't even barely bend it, but very strong, very slick. So if you're spinning around on it with a bobcat, you'll be able to spin around on it real nice and head back the other direction. Logs make good mats. You can lay these out. The only problem is with log mats is if you don't have a thumb on your excavator, they're not fun to move around. So if you're digging ditch and you need to use log mats, you probably want to run your ditch bucket with your thumb so you can pick them up and leapfrog them in front of you so you can keep digging. And what we did one time, had a scenario where we were digging a ditch and needed some logs to help hold the excavator up out in the muck. I took the bobcat with the grapples and I actually kept moving them around so Dad could keep digging. But the nice thing about logs is they're easy to get your hands on, because usually there's always a tree line or you've just cut the brush off the ditch anyways. They're cheap. I mean, they're free basically. And who cares if they rot, because usually in a scenario like that you're going to end up burning them anyways after you've done used them as a mat. So in all reality, the most economical mat there is, I know it's a little harder to deal with, is the log. Usually you only need like, I've used 8-inch logs. I've used all the way up to 18 to 20-inch logs. I mean, it don't take much. Just a good healthy 8-inch log will hold up an excavator pretty well. So we've gone through all of our different mats here. So now I'm going to set up some scenarios, and a scenario that we're dealing with right now, and I'm going to show you how these devices, whatever you want to call them, help you out in bad situations. Usually the only time we use mats is when it's very wet, or if we're out in the muck, which muck, Canadians call it muskeg, we call it muck. Usually, typically, muck has either peat moss under it and it's super soft, or it's got a sand base under it, but there's enough muck on top that by the time you get down to the sand, you're already stuck. You're already hung up with a hoe. So these mats help us float over those spots. But basically, I'll explain what muck and peat moss is, and I guess muskeg's the same thing as the Canadians call it. Basically, it is prehistoric plant material that was, I don't know, deposited or just left, or how it exactly worked, but however peat moss works, it's the same way. But it's a very, very soft, it's almost like working on a pillow. If you jump up and down on it, it's like a wave out there. I mean, if you bounce a hoe, it's like you're sitting on a waterbed or a pillow. My friends that have never seen it before, I send them Snapchats of it, and it scares them. They're like, how do you work on that? It's like, you got to stay light on your feet with an excavator. Don't sit around too long. Don't stay in the same spot. When you're digging ditch, keep moving. Don't get full buckets. If you can, just take half buckets. Take out however much you need, and don't mess around. Get moving again. So You got to respect it, or you will lose an excavator in it. I've never lost one yet. I've never had one I've never even had one close to being stuck. I've always stayed moving when I'm in it, and always thought ahead before I ever made a move, and that's what's kept me from getting stuck. And some spots you look at and you just know not to go there. But usually if there's a wet spot and there's a challenge along a ditch, I'm the one that heads into it, because I always take the 200 and I go for it. We've got the 270, and usually we just stay out of those spots with it, because if the 200 gets stuck, the 270 will usually drag it out. But I've never had to drag it out, but I just know it will. So anyways, I'm going to set up some scenarios, and then I'll show you what we got going on. Okay, so scenario 1 here is I've taken this potting soil, which potting soil is peat moss, and it's got the closest properties to it as I could come up with for muck, except muck don't have all these little white styrofoam balls and little chunks of fertilizer, and it's Miracle Grow potting soil. It's the best I could come up with at Walmart, because they really didn't have very many options, because right now we're in quarantine, and with COVID-19, potting soil is supposedly not an essential item at Walmart. So anyways, so I've set up this scenario. We're out in the middle of a muck field. It's a farm field. The only thing we're missing here is grass on the ditch banks, which I can't grow grass really fast. So anyways, we're out in the middle of this muck field. This muck ditch needs cleaned. It's a pump ditch. It's a real low spot. So we got our 690B out here, and this side of the ditch we're going to set on, we have no mats, and it is soft. We swing over, we go get us a bucket of dirt. Well, this hoe don't move too easy. Well, anyways, well, this one's not a very good representation for this. But anyways, just imagine we go to get a bucket of dirt, and we go to hoist, and we smash in. We're constantly smashing in. We're working ourselves in deeper and deeper and deeper. And next thing you know, we're all leaning and stuff, and we're trying to get ourselves out, and we're going to end up stuck. So what do? We know we can't dig this ditch, because the whole way through we're just going to destroy the bank and everything else, and it's just going to end up pushing the ditch in, and it's just going to make a mess. So the way to solve this problem is with mats. So we got our timber mats, our crane mats. We're going to set these up right here. I'm going to go on this other side of the ditch because I screwed this one all up now. So I'm going to lay me out 4 mats. Well, 5 mats. Let's go 5 mats. I'm going to set my excavator up on here. Now, we have, if not doubled our footprint, we've tripled or almost quadrupled our footprint, and we've lowered our pounds per square inch on the ground even more, and we've made ourselves more stable. So now when we're swung over here and we hoist that bucket full of dirt, she's got stability. I mean, plenty of stability, because now we've doubled the width of our track hanging out on this side plus in the middle. So we have solved the problem of the hoe tipping towards the ditch and potentially getting stuck. So that's how we'd use timber mats. And then when we want to move forward, we just track forward, we swing around, we grab this mat from behind, and we bring it up here, and we continue to build our mat road. So that's the scenario with timber mats. So we'll pick these mats up, get these out of the way. Okay, now we're going to do it with logs. So we lay our logs out like so. You can leave a little ways between them. That way you don't need so many. So here we go. Got our excavator up on here now. Not as sturdy as these flat timber mats, but definitely still an improvement on being able to do what we need to do, because we have stability and we have flotation. All this does is give us stability and flotation. So now scenario is when you're done digging, you just lift a log and throw it in front, and you just keep walking down your logs, just like so. So, okay, so that's the ditch cleaning scenario with using mats, logs, and you could also use these waffle mats. Same principle. Lay them out. Works just the same. Laminated mat's the same. So that's how we can use them when we're cleaning ditch. So now I'm going to set up a whole nother scenario, and I'm going to show you how that scenario is going to work. Okay, so I have another scenario set up now. Okay, let's imagine that this blue towel right here is a delicate ecosystem out in a swamp. And we need to cross this ecosystem without destroying it to get over here to do either a dam project or a any kind of project, I suppose. A dam project, dredging project, tree project, whatever. So we got our timber mats, or we have our waffle mats, or we have our poly mats. Poly mats, we're going to be moving heavy equipment over it. We're actually going to take the old 690B across the delicate ecosystem. So we're going to lay our mats out. We're going to keep them tight. Lay them out across here. And now we can drive right across. Well, if my tracks roll. We can sit right on top of that delicate ecosystem and not hurt it underneath these mats. So another scenario, let's call the blue towel a football field or a beautiful yard, and let's say that this is a tree. This tree over here, this tree over here needs to come out. So we need to get our tree trimming truck or a bobcat over there after we cut that tree up to get it out of the yard. So we're going to lay out our poly mats now because they're lightweight. Men can actually handle them. And lay these out. We're going to lay them out all the way out to here, and then we're going to lay out us a big work area so we can turn around with our bobcat and head back out the other way. So now we can drive out through this grass without destroying our grass underneath. We're on top of the mats. As soon as we're done, we drag the mats back out, clean them up, and we have not disturbed this beautiful grass. So I'm going to show you what happens if you don't use mats in this grass scenario or ecological system. So let's say we just said to heck with it. We're going to track the hoe across to get to the other side. We come out here and we just shred that. Just ruin that ecosystem. We've just shredded it. I mean, it's done for. The frogs have died, the turtles have died, everything's just, we're getting a lawsuit because we destroyed it. So anyways, there are two situations where we could either use waffle mats, timber mats, crane mats, or laminated mats could even been used in that scenario. But the easiest way to solve that situation was with the poly mats or the waffle mats or the crane mats. Anything else, I guess the grass situation, the easiest way to solve it was with the poly mats because they're easy to handle. So anyways, I'm going to set up another scenario here and I'll show you that one. Okay, so we're going to set up another scenario here. So we're up here in Canada. We're in some really soft ground, soft soil, muskeg, whatever you want to call it, out in the muck, peat moss. And we want to set up an oil rig. So we're going to drill for oil. So we're going to lay us out some timber mats. And we're going to make us a base for it. I think we're even going to go 2 mats thick just to be safe because it is soft out here. So I got this, I got me a nice base set up for it. We're going to throw out a few waffle mats out here in case we have some other small equipment in the area, you know, excavator, stuff like that. So I'm going to bring in the oil rig, or drilling rig, right now. There we go. Can sit there nice and sturdy, not going to move because its weight is spread out more with the mats. Its ground pressure is lower with the mats under it. So this is not an oil rig, this is a DeWalt magnet-based drill. But it's a good heavy tool I had in the shop that I could use for this representation. So I'm going to set up another one, even another scenario. I'm having fun with this, so I'm going to keep setting scenarios up. Okay, so your mother-in-law wants to come over to dinner, but you got to get her across the yard. No, I'm just kidding. That's just a joke. I'm just joking. Okay, so another scenario that we would need mats, and they would come in handy, is let's say we have a ditch, and we're a logging operation, and we need to get across this ditch to this side to log some trees out, and we need just a temporary bridge to get across. We don't want nothing permanent. We don't want to move a bunch of dirt to put a normal culvert in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some mats and we're going to lay them across, and we're actually going to form ourselves a bridge across these troubled waters. Well, I don't know if they're troubled or not. So now we'll take our dozer and we'll bring our dirt up to each end. May even dump some stone on each side if we've got it readily available. And then we will be able to cross over. We'll be able to cross over our ditch to get to the other side to log our woods. So there's another scenario. And I'm going to get to the scenario that we are faced with right now that we have got to figure out, and the reason that we've got the mats. So I'm going to work on that one right now. I'm going to set that up and I'm going to show you how it works. Okay, so the situation we're faced with right now on the project that we are working on, and the reason we got the mats, is we're in the process of fixing a 10-acre low spot. If anybody's been following my videos, you will know about this. We're fixing a 10-acre low spot in a farm field, and it's out in the muck. Same scenario as what we've been dealing with, is wet muck and peat moss in this video. So we dug a temporary ditch to de-water the area that we were fixing, because we're taking out a foot of the original topsoil and we're hauling back in about 16 inches of sand. Well, now we've gotten to the point where a temporary ditch, we've got to cross it. And the only way that we're going to cross it is to throw a pipe in it and bury it. Well, this toilet paper tube here, taped together, is our pipe. Well, it's not our exact pipe. We're not going to use toilet paper tube. Trust me. We're going to use probably frac coat tile. So anyways, we're going to throw this pipe in our temporary ditch. But the problem is, with the haul truck, the Steiger with the pan, and the 9300 with the dump wagon behind it, the problem is it's going to pound this pipe down and just destroy this pipe. Because the 9300 and wagon, the total payload on that, well, total gross weight of the whole machine loaded is about 150,000 pounds. So what do you think is going to happen to this pipe that's out in the soft ground with fresh backfill over it? It's going to get hammered down and destroyed. So what we're going to do is, we're going to bury our pipe. We're going to bed our pipe real nice like normal. Let me gather up some soil here. And then, see, we got to go through this low spot where this pipe is. We got to get up to the next sand hill so we can follow the sand hill around and haul the dirt where we need to. So what we're going to do is, we've got plenty of mats. We're actually going to work some mats down in here, like this, on top of the pipe. Get them worked down in there real nice. We're going to make a mat road up to this. We're going to lay these, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lay them like this. lay them across like this so they catch the original ground on both sides. Then we're going to lay them across like this, and we're going to continue this road on to our next sandhill and back to where we begun. Get one more in here. So now what we're going to be able to do is, with the 9300 in the wagon, we will be able to drive right over the top of that pipe without crushing that pipe. Just like that. And that's the whole idea of why we got all the mats that we brought home, is to make this mat road and to save this pipe. So got the 9300 across, take dump trucks across, which I have an articulated dump truck somewhere, I don't know where it's at. But anyways, so that'll keep that pipe from getting crushed. So just for good measure, let me show you what'll happen if we don't have any mats and we try to just cross that pipe with no mats. So the truck's going back and forth. It's been across 10-12 times. Everything's been okay, and it's starting to hammer it down right there. It's really starting to work it down, and there's nothing we can do about stopping it because the ground's just not supportive of the weight. I come cruising along with the 9300. I get across to the tractor because it's got duals. The duals are spreading out the weight on the tractor. But here comes the heavy wagon. What do you think's going to happen? Boom. Crush the pipe. Pipe's junk. Smashed. Garbage. Junk. So now you see why it is very important to have this wood across there to spread that weight. With these across, I could push down pretty hard and not hurt that pipe. So there's my last scenario on mats and how they work. So I'm going to do one more thing before this video is over. We're going to go over LGP and non-LGP dozers real quick. So another scenario with crane mats is actually using them with a crane. So we'll get some set out here. Now remember, story is we just come down off the sand hill. We're making our way over to an old farm pond, and the farm pond's surrounded by muck, and over years of cows drinking out of the pond, they've got it smushed down, and the new landowner decided that they want to dig their pond out, and they want to put some fish in it and make a nice fishing hole out of it. So we got to get the crane from the sand hill over to the pond. So we got our drag line here. Dave Warren, if you're watching, you'll greatly appreciate that I decided to bring the old Bantam model out of the house instead of the newer Cinnabogan. Thought it'd be more nostalgic for this part of the country. So anyways, so we got our crane out here, and we need to continue our mat road so we can keep on traveling to where we're going. So usually on cranes that done work with mats, they would have a hook right here on one of your drag chains on the side of your bucket, and you would actually swing around. There'd be a loop of cable in your mat. You would hook that loop, and you would drag that mat around, and you would drop it in front of you, travel a little ways, swing back around, and grab you another mat, throw it out in front, and away you go. And you, after you got enough mats laid out, you would start leapfrogging them. You'd take them from the back and put them in the front. Just keep tracking down them. My drag line is a LS78 link belt, LS78 LC. So I have a wider track and longer track, and that kind of reduces the need for mats. I can go over some softer ground than what you usually can with a standard undercarriage under a crane. But the thing with a crane, I don't care if it's a lifting crane, drag line, rough terrain crane, the thing is you need to stay level, you need to stay on good farm ground, have a good firm footing under you, because if you start to tip, it's not like an excavator where you can reach over, sit the bucket down, and catch yourself. There is no catching yourself with this floppy cable. It don't catch you. You end up either putting her on her front or slamming back down and the boom going back over the top of the house, and it's not a good deal. So that's a scenario. This is a scenario where you'd use mats with a crane. You could use waffle mats with a drag line. I don't really recommend the logs because cranes have such slick flat pads that I'm afraid they wouldn't grab them. I think you could, but it would be a scenario where if you didn't have mats at all. So I don't really recommend the logs, and the poly mats, that wouldn't be no good. Kind of the idea of these flat crane mats is they are kind of textured too, so the pads will actually lay down in the cracks between the wood, sort of, and that'll help you stay on there. Some crane pads have a hole in them, and you can put like a 1/2-inch bolt and double nut it with the bolt sticking through, and them will actually bite into the wood pads and help you stay on the pads. And then sometimes if you do accidentally slide off, your cable loops in the ends of your mats will catch you and keep you from sliding completely off the mat. Kind of the reason that you always lay a mat crossways like this is because you're sitting on it like this. If you had them laid out with a track on each side, that mat could do this and slide out from under you, or slide up and roll up under you, and that wouldn't be a good scenario either. So you always want to keep your mats crossways, and the mat is actually made to take a load crossways. It's supposed to take the weight this way, not really this way. If you're just driving trucks down them this way, that's okay, but you really should work on them in this direction. So, but that's the drag line crane scenario right there. Okay, so many of you know when you're looking at dozers, there's standard track, there's long track, and there's LGP. What does all that mean? So LGP stands for low ground pressure, LT stands for long track, which usually not super much longer, but it's like a pad or two longer, and standard track is just standard narrow tracks. Usually a LGP is like on 32 or 36 inch pads, and with the LGP it spreads your ground pressure out that much farther, gives you more flotation, and you can pretty much walk on water with a small dozer. So I got a little D3 here. I'm going to call it a D3. It has no numbers on it. It's a brooder push toy. So this machine is LGP. Well, I don't know if exactly LGP, but it looks LGP. So our tracks are nice and wide, and we can cruise right over this soft stuff. I mean, we're just out here just running around, not a problem. Pushing full blades of dirt, no sinking or spinning or whatnot. So anyways, let's say the old D3 quit, had to park her for the day. All that's left on the job site is the old TD25. And the old TD25, it's got narrow pads. It was made for hogging. The narrower the pad, the more traction you get because it just bites. Where with an LGP, you lose some traction because they sit on top and spin. So we got the old TD25 out, and take her out there in the soft stuff, and you realize that the whole dozer just goes down. You're just done, and you can't go nowhere. You can't push no dirt. You're already stuck. You're calling for the guy in the hoe to come bring a big cable sling and drag you out. So the problem is the tracks on the old TD25 are too narrow, way too narrow. These pads are probably only 20-inch pads, and it's going to at least take a 32 to hold this big dozer up out here in this wet stuff. So that's the difference between LGP and standard track machines. They just will not go the places the LGPs will. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Dirt Grain Steel. I had a lot of fun making it. I don't know if anybody learned anything from it or they just watched me play with toys. But me and my friend John were always doing this in our parents' basements. You know, we'd bring dirt in and play with our toys and stuff and set up construction scenes and farm toy scenes. And our biggest thing we always used for dirt was coffee grounds. They smelled really good and they looked just like dirt. So, and usually then if we brought dirt in from outside, it had bugs in it and everything else, and it kind of get moldy stuff on it after a while. But the coffee grounds we'd always put out in his mom and dad's sun porch in the summer and dry them out really good. So they worked out real well. So anybody that's doing any diorama or anything like that, coffee grounds makes a really good dirt. This potting soil, the bad thing about it is it's got all this white stuff in it, and it's got these little balls of fertilizer because it is Miracle-Gro potting soil. Kind of doesn't work real well for your dioramas because, as you can see, it looks like it's got chunks of frost and everything else mixed in it. Like you just went out and you started busting up dirt that had a foot of snow on it and worked it around and smeared it around and stuff. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Dirt Grain and Steel. I do have some regular episodes coming up that are not just me playing with toys, but I'm sure some of you found this entertaining, and I'm sure that some of you learned a lot from this episode. But anyways, if you like this episode, give me a like and a subscribe in the below the video there, and be sure to leave questions, comments, constructive criticism. I don't care. It shows engagement, so do whatever you want. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, I guess. But anyways, today's Sunday. We're going to return to moving dirt in real life Monday. And I also made the first of the farming videos. That's coming up soon. Broke ground on a new farm. Well, not a new farm to us, but it's always been a farm. Got started on that yesterday late afternoon, so pretty excited about that. So yeah, give me a like and a subscribe, and questions, comments, answers, it's all, I love all of it. So I know I gained some subscribers over the weekend. I really appreciate that. If you guys are tuning in, I appreciate you giving me a chance here on the YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm having fun doing this, and I'd like to continue to do it. And the more you subscribe, the more it pushes me to make these videos. So anyways, I hope everybody has a safe upcoming week, and maybe join me next Sunday for maybe another tips and tricks and scenarios and stuff. If you guys got an idea for a video, leave that in the question or the comments section. If you want to see a certain thing done with toys and dirt, I'd probably do it for you. That just sounds weird. But anyways, yeah. So anyways, I'll catch you on the next video, and thanks for watching.